What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, whatever time of day it is, wherever you may be listening. I thank you for listening all the same. This is Owen's Rock and Metal Podcast, episode number 19. Today we're going to be talking about some of the favorite drummers in rock and metal history, and you might be wondering, what qualifies favorite? Who's favorite? I'm going to be having some of my drummer friends on the program today, and we're going to hear from them and just get their perspectives and get their takes. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun, so stay tuned. All right, everybody, what's going on? This is Owen from Owen's Rock and Metal Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to episode number 19. Today we are talking with some of my friends who are drummers, and we are talking about drummers. We are talking about some of the best / favorite drummers in rock and metal history today. And today I have with me my friend Jackson. Jackson, why don't you introduce yourself to the people? Tell a little bit about what style of drumming you play, what kind of music you like to listen to, and certain bands, drummers, any kind of influences like that.
Yeah, what's up? First of all, I want to say I'm a big fan of the podcast. Probably the biggest fan of the
Yeah.
podcast. I listen to like all the episodes, so
Well, our estimated
excited.
audience is one, so I think but I'm hoping to
Yeah.
increase that number here soon.
But no, yeah, I'm stoked to be on the podcast. Yeah, I mainly nowadays the kind of drumming, I do a lot of drum set. What's that mean? I like to jam with like my friends. I have a friend that plays guitar, Jay Stewart, and we'll either like cover songs that we like, or we'll just kind of have a jam session where we just kind of play whatever we're kind of messing around with at the time. Mainly as far as like styles go, I like more of like the metal, harder kind of rock stuff. I also really like punk music and punk drumming. I think that stuff's pretty cool. A lot of fast paced drumming and stuff like that. But I wouldn't say that I listen to a whole lot of punk music in general. Like I would say I listen to more like metal music than I do punk, but I really like that style of drumming.
Sure.
I also, did marching band, the whole thing, 4 years, a lot of that. That's kind of, what I really got me into drumming. So I feel like, as somebody that kind of like came out of drumline, a lot of people, like the others that will be talking, I feel like that influences their drumming and like just, it's a lot different than just picking up drums from like just playing drum set, from like doing
Right.
like something that's very specific on like rhythms and timing, things like that. Also, I did jazz band for a little bit, and that was kind of my introduction to drum set. So I like to think that I kind of try to include like a little bit of swingy stuff. I think that's kind of cool, like the swing sound that
Sure.
some drummers also use in metal too.
Yeah, very cool. So you have a diverse background when it comes to drumming. You have your different influences, such as more of the metal, hard rock, and punk kind of styles. When it comes to specific artists or bands, who do you think you kind of draw on the most, and who do you think is the most influential on you personally, and who do you think is kind of the cream of the crop when it comes to drummers?
Well, you'll probably know my answer, no surprise. I really am a big fan of Joey Jordison and what he's done and his legacy for metal drumming and just his style and yeah, how he plays. And a lot of his, I really like his early stuff a lot, like all of the like early 2000s kind of like first two albums of Slipknot. I think his his drumming on those albums is awesome and just fantastic. And he didn't really like, he as he got older, he aged. He unfortunately passed recently, but he was always like, up until he passed, was an amazing drummer. And I wouldn't say that he lost a whole lot of his skill. He did have a whole I don't even know what the name of the disease was. Well, he had a nerve disease, and like he lost like he was pretty much paralyzed for a little bit, like waist down, and so you could see how that would be such a huge hurdle to get over. being a drummer, especially in his area of drumming.
Sure.
But like I've heard him play after, you know, having to kind of like relearn everything, and it's insane like how good he still was, you know. So
Right.
definitely take a lot of inspiration from that and his style of playing. He does a lot of like fast. He's very fast, but yeah, a lot of
Sure.
fast. He plays like I feel like he hits the snare like a lot. Like he throws a lot of those in whatever he's doing.
Okay.
But yeah,
Very cool. Very cool. So Joey Jordison, Slipknot. That's where I know him. That's where probably a lot of people would know him. Those first few Slipknot albums. Is there a specific moment, whether live or in the studio, where every time you're listening to it, you're like, oh yeah, Joey's about to go in, or something's about to go down, or
I
this is
mean,
right here.
yeah, like well, probably all like this is like the beginning of self-titled is always, you know, it's always so it's a pleasure to listen to that. Like I will just turn it on at the gym and just go like down the whole album.
Hmm.
So I just yeah, I love to listen to all that. But like as far as videos go, like this isn't I wouldn't say necessarily a like a specific Joey video, but like the Ozfest 99 video, that's probably my favorite just to see Slipknot kind of, you know, they're not really a big band at the time. They're just kind of starting. This is kind of like where they got big. They're playing at like noon
Hmm.
and at Ozfest and they're going insane. Like they're jumping, they're going crazy and the security guards are like, what the hell is this band? And they're performing like they're performing for like a sold out arena. Like they are going insane. So I love that video.
Yeah.
There's also the Eyeless video. It's just like a behind backstage video of Joey Jordison playing Eyeless, like the opening little track, and that's always a really cool one to watch. I love that video of him too because that's just a cool song.
Right. Right. So Joey Jordison of Slipknot, yes. Slipknot obviously did not stick with Joey Jordison. Now, refresh my memory here. I'm not the biggest Slipknot guy. The new drummer, his name is
Jay Weinberg.
okay. And obviously, you're going to be more on Team Joey than Team Jay. But what do you think of Jay Weinberg? Is he a solid replacement? Is he, I've heard he's pretty good,
Yeah,
from.
he is probably the best replacement like they could have got,
Mhm.
and like definitely like he's got his whole story too of like he was a fan of Slipknot, you know, like he's a lot younger than most of the original members, but he was totally the guy for the job. He was a big fan of them. His dad, Mike Weinberg, I think, like
Mhm.
he was a huge jazz drummer, um, and that's kind of where he started playing drums. But yeah, I remember like hearing a story that he was saying in an interview, and he was like, "Yeah, like I got contacted for the position, and like I came in." And they sat him down on a drum set and they were kind of like, all right, like show us what you got. And like he pulled out like some of the Slipknot songs he already knew because he was a fan, so he learned them.
Well,
And he's a very technical drummer, so um, really that's probably the best person. I couldn't see anybody else being a Joey replacement. Now, yeah, like Joey, he's got his whole different thing. It's the original a legacy,
sure.
but Jay Weinberg's really good. He's probably technically like when it comes to like technical drumming, like how good he is, if you know what I mean, kind of like technically playing,
Right.
he's probably better,
Yeah.
just with timing and things like that. But yeah, Joey will always be number one.
So we got Joey as established number one. While we wrap up here, could you round off a top five in your eyes? Could you list off four other guys who would be up there? It doesn't even have to be in any order, but any other
Yeah,
names, any other bands?
yeah, I know I talked a lot about Joey, pretty much just all about Joey, but
No, no, that's good. I like it.
so I really like so Danny Carey.
Cool.
He's from Tool. Yeah,
Yeah.
he has some insane drumming. He's a really cool drummer. And his like realm is more of like the weird time signatures that they play in, all the
Like
weird
of metal,
songs.
like can
Yeah,
fucking follow along with what the heck's going on.
yeah, he has that kind of drumming, and it's very yeah, it's very crazy to, especially for like a drummer to like hear what he's doing and like listen to this like crazy polyrhythm that he has going on. So
Cool.
him for sure. I really like Jimmy Sullivan. So he's the first Avenged Sevenfold drummer. He
Okay.
died unfortunately when he was
Mhm.
28.
Oh, wow.
But like the City of Evil, I'm not even a big Avenged Sevenfold fan, but he is like a really good drummer. He in his time he was also really good.
Yeah.
Mario, I always say his name wrong. It's the guy from Gojira. I think it's like,
Gojira? Yeah, okay.
yeah,
I'm not too big on Gojira. I haven't. That's not because I don't like him. It's because I haven't given them a chance. But
yeah, yeah. I do. I don't even know how to say it. It's a weird. They're French, so it's
they're
it's
French,
a
right?
weird pronunciation. But yeah,
That's the guy
Mario.
from Gojira. We'll stick it. We'll keep it at that. Mario from Gojira.
Yeah, he's really good. I really like him. Solid drumming. And so Chris Adler, this is probably going to be a guy that John mentions, Lamb of God drummer.
Ah,
He's really good. So
yeah. So my last question here is concerning a drummer in rock and metal who is notorious for his blunders and is
oh
kind of
God.
a meme on the internet. Lars Ulrich, is he good or is he bad?
I'm not a fan of Lars.
Okay.
I think, he's not really what makes Metallica like the crazy very popular band that they are. I'm not, I don't want to trash the guy or anything, but like I definitely think it's more of like James, like he's kind of the dude, he's Metallica, a little bit more of
Yeah.
the face of Metallica. And I mean, yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of him. I don't think that his drumming is he's probably the worst, best known drummer. That makes sense. Not to, he's very famous, but like he's not. Yeah, I feel like he's famous because of his band, but
He's
he's
famous for other.
can I go up there and play all of those Metallica songs perfectly? No,
I think you
but
can. I
but
think preparation, you could do it. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today. We'd love to have you back for another episode sometime down the line.
there was
Yeah,
one more thing I wanted to say.
yes. Pardon away.
Sorry, I
Please.
just thought of this. One more drummer when I was thinking more about like the punk side of things. Now some people don't consider this band very punk, but because they're a very big radio band. But Trey Cool, from Green
Yeah.
Day,
Yeah.
yeah, I really like his drumming, especially
Mhm.
in like Dookie. Like
Yeah.
that album influences me a lot and how I play. I don't have as many as the technical skills as like some of the crazy like Joey Jordison, Danny Carey guys.
Yeah.
So I can handle like the Trey Cool like punk sounding tracks, and I'm a pretty
Yeah.
big Green Day fan, so I also like him. Just to throw that in there.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining the show. We loved
Thanks for
having you
having
on
me.
today. We'd love to have you on again in the future. So yeah. So everyone
Thank
stay
you.
tuned. We got plenty more coming ahead. We're going to keep talking rock and metal drummers with some drummer friends of mine. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us, Jackson. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen.
All right, and welcome back, folks. I am here, as promised, with my friend Roman. Roman, what's going on?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to have you. So today we're talking drummers. We're talking about some of my guests' favorite drummers in rock and metal. And we talked to Jackson earlier, and his favorite was Joey Jordison, and he listed some others who I think you might mention as well. So I'll go ahead and ask you the same kind of general questions I asked him to start off. So you are a drummer, Roman, and why don't you talk a little bit about your drumming background and some of your influences when it comes to drumming and what kind of styles of drumming you like to play?
Okay, well, I've been drumming since probably about 12. Been going on for a while now. I really got into it through the band program in my middle school, and it just kind of took off. And I started off playing drum set in a jazz band for my middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason that happened was because no one else was going to do it, and without a drummer, they weren't going to have a jazz band that year. So I just decided to take over the spot, take the position, and I learned everything. Majority of my basic skills were learned at a camp that I went to during the summer, and I'd highly recommend it. Um, just going to and learning from teachers and whatnot. It's the best place you can learn. That way you don't get any bad habits. Although some of the people that I will mention, I don't believe really had any teachers. They really did teach themselves. Um, Here in the moment, I will mention a couple of them, but a lot of my influences were like Buddy Rich. He was a jazz musician. He really set it off for a lot of big drummers.
Mm-hmm.
John Bonham, my all-time favorite drum set
Okay.
player. He really set me off in the position and what I wanted to do with my drumming and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. He's my all-time favorite. And another one of my big favorites is Danny Carey from Tool. He
Yeah.
is amazing, and I really he blows my mind. Half the stuff he plays is just insane. So
Yeah.
that's a
Very
bit about
cool.
me.
Definitely.
So
Yeah. Definitely some recognizable names there. So you said you began in jazz band. Um, And I know as well that you were also in marching band throughout high school, and I know you've played your kind of fair share of other genres. So, what kind of style of drumming do you think you resonate with the most, or do you think is you're most comfortable with?
I'm gonna say the most comfortable with is definitely rock and kind of metal side of things. I'm not a very good metal player, but I'm a good rock player. I mean, that's the big thing that all drummers are really into is playing rock. But I also
Sure.
say I try and focus on other fundamentals like jazz, which jazz is a big part of my life. It's I know a lot of people hate on jazz and kind of diss on it a little bit and say it's boring and there's no lyrics, whatnot. But I
Hmm.
mean, to me, music isn't really about the lyrics. It's really about what the musician is speaking to you through their musical notes and through their own language. And I think it's amazing how I could connect with somebody who has probably like jazz back in the 30s. I could connect with um, a lot like Buddy Rich. I connect with him real easy through his music. I listen to it and I know exactly what he's putting down, the words he's saying, just from the notes he's putting down and his band's putting down. So it's
Sure,
just a
sure.
big thing.
Definitely in those names you mentioned, I feel like you definitely have distinct eras. You know, you have Buddy Rich, kind of the older era. You have John Bonham, kind of the one of the original kind of rock drummers or one of the first big time rock drummers. And then you have a guy like Danny Carey, who's really more on that technical side. He's kind of more modern day. So I think you really have it divided up well into eras. If you had to pick a favorite drummer, or if you had to pick one name who is kind of the most influential, or I tell you what, I'll simplify it. And if you could even give like, well, you gave a few names, so we'll just break it down here. I won't make you pick just one because that might be hard unless you can do it.
I
It
mean,
sounds good.
the question, I mean, influential to me or influential to most mainstream
Um,
drummers out there?
well, why yeah, answer either or. You know, if you want to answer both, who you think's the most influential, and then who is most influential for you, we can do that.
I would say most influential for me. I already mentioned his name, John Bonham.
Mhm.
Um, le- from previous podcast, if any of you listeners have listened to him, which if you haven't, go check them out. They're awesome.
Thank
Anyway,
you.
but John Bonham, I started off listening to Led Zeppelin from my stepdad, and it
Hmm.
really like just listen to music. It was awesome. I loved it.
Right.
He had every album. I've listened through every one,
Hmm.
and like biggest song that hit off with me, which everybody knows this song from Led Zeppelin. It's from their fourth album. Is
Hmm.
When the Levee Breaks.
When the levee,
So
we got that big bass drum introduction. So would you say that in terms of, we'll go with John Bonham as your favorite? Is that fair to say?
yes, that is fair to assume.
So if we're working with the assumption, with the fact now that John Bonham is your favorite drummer, is When the Levee Breaks your favorite either moment in the studio or live? What is your favorite John Bonham moment?
Oh, favorite John Bonham moments definitely when the levee breaks. In the studio, not the live one. That one because that's like really what set me off. Listen to that. I'm like,
Hmm.
man, that'd be cool to play drum set, learn how to play that. And then another big one was I was listening to Kashmir, and everyone knows that bass hit that happens midway through the song.
Right.
Uh, Everybody's listening to it, and it comes on. To me, it just boggled my mind because I didn't understand what happened. I heard it, but I didn't know how he played it. So that night that I listened to that, I was on YouTube scrolling through trying to figure out how to play it. which it's still difficult for me today because I haven't been up on my practicing skills lately, but it still resonates with me. Like that's always a good hit in the drum center for me.
Sure. So definitely John Bonham, one of the more recognizable names, if not the most recognizable in all of, drumming and all of rock music, honestly. Definitely has some terrific moments, whether you want to point out Moby Dick or Good Times, Bad Times, or When the Levee Breaks, or the rhythm he's playing on Fool in the Rain. That pretty much spans his entire career there. And he was great throughout, I would argue. But so let's turn to some of the other guys you were influenced by. So we've got John Bonham established at the top. So if you had to round out a top 5, give 4 other names of who your favorites are. It doesn't have to be in any particular order, but if you want to throw some names out there and what the band they're associated with and just kind of why they are significant to you.
Okay, let's see, top 5. So we got number 1, John Bonham.
Okay.
I already explained that one. So number 2, I'd say I'd round it out to Danny Carey.
Okay.
Tool, just his technical side of things and the way he plays, it's just mind-boggling, and the rhythms that he does are
this was
great.
This was a drummer that Jackson had mentioned in his top 5, and he had mentioned how Danny Carey plays a lot of interesting polyrhythms and a lot of really technical stuff that's really interesting to listen to.
Yeah, no, they're if you listeners haven't checked out Tool, definitely recommend it. It is a bit different. I will say that it's not for every person, but it's honestly really hard to kind of follow along. It's not like your simple 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of rock beat. I'd say, but it's definitely like a psychedelic technical side of things. But anyway, moving on. Oh, sorry. Moving on to number 3, I'd probably say Buddy Rich.
Okay.
He when I went to that jazz camp during the summer, learning the drum, my drumming instructor, his name's Sammy K. He came all the way from LA to teach jazz camp every year.
Mm-hmm.
And he came out, and the first person he told us to look up when we went home the first day was Buddy Rich. And that's exactly what I did. Went home, listened to Buddy Rich. The song was Bugle Call Rag. And watching Buddy direct his own band. Because in my head, I always thought the drummer was just like the guy in the back that keeps the beat going along with the bass.
Sure.
But with Buddy, he ran the whole band like Phil Collins. Like Buddy ran the entire band and helped write all the songs and directed everything. And I thought it was awesome. And I was like, I never knew a drummer could actually lead the whole thing. And seeing him do that just kind of blew my mind. And I was listening to more of his music and watching him play and watching videos of him play was just crazy. He's probably one of the biggest influence on John Bonham. If you look at Buddy Rich's kit compared to John Bonham's kit, it's basically set up exactly the same, except there's an extra tom, I believe, and the bass drum is much bigger.
Yes, Bonham definitely known for that big bass drum sound. So we've got John Bonham, we've got Danny Carey, we've got Buddy Rich, some pretty recognizable names there. If any 2 other names maybe throw out there, or 3, a few other names you got, or bands or moments or anything like that?
I'd say number 4 would probably Lars from Metallica. Everybody knows Lars. We all love Lars. He is a big influencer on me. After Led Zeppelin came Metallica for me.
Okay.
And started off with Master of Puppets.
Yeah, a lot of people have an opinion on Lars, and I'll tell you what. That was actually going to be my exit question, my closing question, but I'll still ask it. So we got Lars and one other name, maybe from the drum world, or someone who has had an impact on you, or someone you're a fan of.
Man, there's a lot out there, to be completely honest. If I'm really narrowing it down,
who was the last drummer you listened to, and you were just like, they wowed you, they blew you away?
Man, that's really hard to. I think I would have to say Carter Buford from Dave Matthews Band.
I've heard comments on Mr. Buford. I heard he has a good pocket, what they call a pocket. You want to describe to our listeners what a pocket is?
So being in the pocket is just being able to hold that time, baby. Just holding as tight as you can. and having that groove.
Right.
So he has a wonderful pocket, as you said. He is great. My dad has been listening to Dave Matthews forever, like since I was little.
It's
And
definitely a dad band, in my opinion.
it is definitely a dad band. You are correct. Like it is definitely from my parents' generation. I would
Right.
say. Like my mom enjoys Dave Matthews. My dad loves Dave Matthews. I've listened to some of their stuff. Some of his stuff's not all for me, but I do enjoy a couple songs by him. But
No.
yeah,
I have not listened to Dave Matthews extensively. My dad's a fan. My mom is not a fan. So household divided, but maybe I'll give the old Dave Matthews Band a chance someday. So as you mentioned, what I'm going to be asking, what I asked Jackson, what I'm going to ask you, but you've kind of already answered it. Lars, yes, no? Fan?
I'd say I am a fan.
You're a fan of Lars?
A lot of people do shit. I honestly I do shit on Lars sometimes, which everybody shits on Lars. You can't deny that. Everybody shits on Lars. But I mean, a lot of bands really wouldn't be, I don't think, here or have the influence that they had if it weren't for Metallica. So we really do have to sit here and thank him for a lot of the things that he has done for the metal community and whatnot.
Sure.
So I just think a lot of the songs we have, like For Whom the Bells Tolls, is like one of my favorite. It's so simple, it's good. Like kind of drum beats.
Sure.
You listen to it, super simple, super good, and then you can go to Master of Puppets and listen to, oh shit, I can't even think of it right now. You got me going on about Lars right now. I can't even think of the song.
Well, so that's one vote for a fan of Lars, one vote for not as big a fan of Lars. So we'll leave it up to our third guest to be the tiebreaker on that. Roman, any final comments, any parting words before we wrap it up here?
I'd say if any of you listeners out there are musicians, keep on it. Always keep playing the music, because I feel like a lot of it just going to electronic. I mean, if you are doing like electronic music and whatnot, keep it up, because I mean, music is music. But if you're playing a string instrument or you're playing some drums or you're a vocalist, like keep on doing what you're doing. Music is from the heart and the soul, and I love it to death, and I'd hate to see it like all disappear. And especially jazz. If you're a jazz player, please keep playing jazz. It's kind of a dying music genre right now. But another thing is check out all the other podcasts from Owen here.
Yes,
they're all great.
We are excited to announce that we're going to kind of revamp the podcast. We're going to kind of reintroduce some energy into it. I know for a while there it was kind of dormant. It was kind of post very rarely, but we're going to try to get back on a somewhat regular posting schedule much more frequently. Hoping to have exciting topics and get guests on, such as you, Roman. I'm sure you'd love to come back on if you had the opportunity.
Oh yeah, all the time, man. You ask me, I'll be here.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate it, Roman. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks so much.
Of course, buddy. Take it easy.
You too. See ya. All right, folks. Back to episode number 19 of Owen's Rock and Metal Podcast. Today we are talking about drummers with drummers. So you heard from the first two guests there, their thoughts and perspective on some of the best rock and metal drummers in their opinions. So we got my third guest here, my friend John. John, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to have the program. So you yourself, you are a drummer. So why don't you just kind of, to start, talk about some of the different styles of drumming you play, some of your influence when it comes to drumming, and some of the styles you like to listen to and admire.
Well, I've been drumming for, 12, 13 years. Been in and out of it throughout the whole time. Played drum set, marching drums, big rock and metal guy. So I pretty much listen to the drums themselves for the most part when I listen to music. I wouldn't say I have any. I played jazz, I played classic, I played swing. I'm not as talented to play thrash or heavy metal because that takes some serious practice, but I think I like to listen to that the most. Um, I can't say that I like to listen to all types of drums, just to hear all types of drumming, just to hear what difference it comes from each genre. So
Sure. Well, 12 to 13 years is a mighty long time. So you definitely have experience. So when it comes to specific names or people in the rock and metal genre who you like to listen to, who are some of your favorites, or who are the ones that you draw from the most, or find really to be, really quality, talented drummers?
I think it would be an embarrassment and a shame if you didn't start that. If I didn't answer that question with first, is John Bonham, because I feel like he just set the scene for like modern rock and drumming, and what he did was so influential and so big and so heavy, and especially for 1968. There's rock drummers, but there wasn't heavy rock drummers, and he hit hard on some big drums. So I'd say that's where most of my influence comes from. I've learned a lot of Zeppelin stuff. I mean, Zeppelin's just legendary. I mean, what can I say? You just can't hate it. I mean, When the Levee Breaks, such a big, open, just loud sounding song with just a nasty drum beat the entire time. It's just classic.
For sure.
Another one a lot of people like to leave out and forget, but he's very influential and is Phil Rudd from AC/DC. He's basic drum beat that everyone learns at the beginning, but he mastered it, called them the master. He's called the master of minimalism, and he is the drummer long term for one of the greatest bands ever to live because of just his style. He didn't change it, and it just fit so well with what he did. Bill Rudd, John Bonham. Oh, you keep going. Bill Ward from Black Sabbath did the same thing as Bonham, just not as popular, I guess. He just played big, heavy style on that early time. Other drummers, Joey Jordison from Slipknot. I'm sure you've heard that name before in the previous guest.
Yeah, that's the first guest, yes.
Oh, let's see. I mean, what's the drummer from Nirvana? No, not the drummer from Nirvana. Yeah, who was the Nirvana drummer?
Dave Grohl.
Dave Grohl, classic, legendary. He kind of is in the middle. He was in the 90s, so he kind of did a ladder to the newer, heavier, faster stuff. Lamb of God, Adler, Gojira's Mario. I can't really pronounce his last name, but I could just keep naming heavier and faster and more technical drummers, and those would be my favorites. But those are some names that I could think of.
For sure. Definitely some similarities between the previous guests, definitely some repeat names, and there's clearly a reason for that. So when it comes to your tastes as a listener, do you like to go for a drummer who's more straightforward or someone who's more technical, playing more like prog music, stuff that's more complex?
I would say a mix of both. When you say prog, I think the first thing I can think of is Dana Carey. I think that's his name. And he's Tool. And he plays a lot of crazy time signatures, and he's all over the place. And their music is very innovative, very different, progressive for sure. And they're very good. It's just not one of my favorites, but I respect it. But with Lamb of God's Chris Adler, his feet just do the craziest stuff, but he keeps his hands kind of at a 4/4 time. He just kind of keeps his hands basic, but his feet are all over the place, and his fills are really fast and are just, it's like basic metal drumming, but it's really fast and it fits well. And then like Gojira's drumming, there's a mix of Lamb of God and Tool, where it's like crazy and technical, but it goes into a basic, easy breakdown to understand and listen to and to bang your head to. So I guess I wouldn't say I like too technical, but I don't like it too easy. So somewhere in the middle.
Okay, for sure. So would you say that the big difference between rock and metal drumming is the difficulty? Would you say like metal drumming is more challenging? Because when you mention your playing styles, you said you don't really play too heavy of metal drumming because it takes a higher level of skill.
Yeah, there is no admitting that, and that's where it's hard to be like, oh, the greatest drummer of all time. It's like, well, Joey Jordison or one of these new metal guys and these new metal bands where they have these giant drum sets and this new equipment, and it's easier to play and these nice sticks and easier drums. But not back in 1968, 1969, John Bonham was stuck with what he had in his time, and drumming was as innovative and crazy it is today. So he's great for inventing and making what he could out of what he had, because back then there was no crazy metal fast, all these crazy polyrhythms and stuff that these new drummers are doing, because it just wasn't a thing. So Bonham's great for what he did in his time, just as like Joey Jordison, Slipknot did great for what he did now. And all the thrash guys who kind of set the way, like the Megadeth drummer and even Lars Ulrich, who, started the heavy metal, the heavy music with the double bass. So I'd say the big difference between hard rock and heavy metal with just having a double bass drum. That's just the big one. And I think most.
For sure. And you mentioned Lars there. That was actually, that's the question I've asked the previous two guests, and I guess we'll just do it now since we brought up Lars. What's your opinion on Lars? Because many people have their opinions. He's probably, as the first guest put it, he is the most famous, hated on drummer.
I would say he's one of the most famous drummers just in the rock and metal community, because of, first of all, the band he's in, which is phenomenal and are phenomenal for a reason, because they make good music, and because of he's part of that band. And he is not bad, but he is not great, as I would put it, because of just some of the things he does, the way he plays, his fills, his live performances. But what people really don't like is how I guess his persona is very kind of tough, and I'm in Metallica and I'm a boss. And I mean, hey, I would have that same mentality, but it's like, bro, you got to be great, to be in this great band. But he's like, I am great. But then you go out and see him live and you see him just like tank a song, and it's like, bro. So I think that's what people don't like. There's no way where he's bad. Personally, I'm not a fan, just because some of it's kind of weird to listen to. And I've mentioned this before, is like some albums he sounds good, some he doesn't. Live is awkward. Some say he got worse over time. But I would say he's not bad, but he's not great, just because he doesn't keep that consistency with getting better and staying as good as he always has been. So that would be my answer, if that makes any sense.
No, I definitely think, people can take from that answer and they can, try and understand what you're saying. I get what you're saying. So as we kind of wind down here, if I asked you to round out a top five, it doesn't have to be in any order, but maybe a list of 5 names who you think are some of your favorite drummers. We'll leave it at favorite instead of best.
Favorite or greatest, because that could be different.
We'll do favorite, because I think greatest is a little hard to measure because you have different styles and genres. So we'll do favorite in terms of whether it's most influential on you or who you just like to sit down and listen to.
Okay, John Bonham, hands down. Led Zeppelin. Oh goodness, Chris Adler from Lamb of God, the original drummer. Yeah. Joey Jordison from Slipknot just died. Rest in peace. First drummer. I really, oh man, this is tough. That's top 3. I wouldn't say that answer would ever change. Mario Duplanter. I think that's how you pronounce it. Mario Duplanter from Gojira. He's phenomenal. His drums sound amazing. And Michael Miley from the Rival Sons. I did not forget. Michael Miley from the Rival Sons, underrated band. He has a Bonham-esque style. He doesn't copy, but he has a Bonham-esque style in his music, and I love it. So those would be my top 5. Gojira, Rival Sons, Slipknot, Lamb of God, and Led Zeppelin. The original drummers for all those bands. There you go.
Very well. That was it was a very definitive list. That was very, very well laid out. I'm glad we threw in the Rival Sons there at the end. October 17th in Cleveland. We'll be making
yes, sir. It is time. Mike Miley live.
It's gonna be in the flesh. It's gonna be
Exciting.
great. Very
Yeah.
exciting. We'll have to do a Rival Sons episode coming up.
Oh, we need to.
Well, if you have any final parting words, anything else you'd like to say, feel free to do so now.
Nothing, just drumming. Drumming is the coolest part of hard rock and heavy metal, and that's an opinion. It's my opinion.
We'll keep that at an opinion. I'm not ready to but thanks so much for joining us on the program today. We really enjoyed having you, and love to have you back in the future.
Of course. Love being on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it, folks. 3 separate conversations with 3 separate individuals, all with different opinions on drummers in rock and metal history. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and be sure to check out past episodes for all different topics that we've covered in the past. And as always, never stop rockin'.